But yeah, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Anne Gambles. I'm a Change and Agility Senior Manager and I work here at the Open University. I'm also a co-lead of our System Thinking in Practice community of practice. And I have a postgraduate certificate in Systems Thinking in Practice, which I gained 2 or 3 years ago through the Open University. I've got an interest in leadership, ways of working, and something called business agility, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on, or any detail. I'm just going to see if I can change. There we go. Change slide. But if you're interested in that, then come and have a chat with me afterwards. So I'm going to talk about the early stages of our long-lived systemic inquiry that I'm leading here at the Open University. We're looking at how we might best grow Open University colleagues' systems thinking in practice. Okay, and I thought I'd start with just a little bit of context about the Open University. And I don't think that I've not been in any sessions where anyone else has done this, so hopefully this is going to be interesting and not duplicating what other people have said. So the Open University was founded in 1969. It is, as the OU, the largest university in the UK by number of students. And most of our students learn at a distance. We have almost 200,000 of them. We do have a handful of students on campus. They are postgraduate researchers and they number around a couple of hundred. And we have approximately 9,000 staff, 50% of which have always worked remotely. So we are a hybrid kind of institution. We're based here in Milton Keynes, but we also have regional centres across England and offices in the UK nations. Okay, so, and I've skipped on a little bit further than I thought I would have done, but that's fine. So I thought I'd start with why. So why does growing Open University colleague systems thinking in practice matter? Well, we are a large university, as just described, and we are operating in a challenging HEI environment, as all universities are at the moment. So it's important that we are able to deal with complexity, navigate uncertainty, and act purposefully in the environments in which we work. And that's important that we do that as academics, but also as professional services colleagues as well. So developing our systems thinking and practice capability helps us meet this challenge, and I see this as helping to strengthen our collaborative intelligence and learning, enhance individual and organisational capability and agility, and create sustainable change. So that's some of the why. And I thought I'd just go on and talk a little bit, add a little bit more to the why, by talking a little bit about an operating model that somebody called Maria Muir, who works for an organisation or a movement called Sooner, Safer, Happier, talks about. And I should mention that outside of my role at the OU, or maybe as part of it in some ways, I am a Sooner, Safer, Happier advocate. And yeah, Sooner, Safer, Happier is an approach that's focused on delivering people-positive, complexity-conscious change to deliver value-based business agility outcomes. So Maria Muir of Sooner, Safer, Happier has talked for almost a decade about the organisational operating model and how she's been approaching change by focusing on 3 interconnected circles, or hows, and ensuring that they are in balance. I found it really interesting when I came across this. I was aware that, the importance of the why and how there's more than one why. You have the why of purpose and the why of movement. But yeah, I find it really fascinating to think about the fact that there's perhaps more than one type of how and how you might differentiate between those. So they are how people organise, how the work is organised, and how we behave. And Maria really advocates for intentionally thinking about each of these three circles and paying attention to all of them, because if you're not doing that, then you're not going to achieve successful outcomes. Here at the OU, as outlined by Martin Reynolds earlier in his talk, we get taught in our systems thinking courses about what Martin describes as being threshold concepts. So engaging with multiple perspectives, understanding interrelationships, and reflecting on boundary judgments. And this is something called the STiP heuristic, which is included in the OU systems thinking modules, in particular TV 871. So I briefly referenced that because I had a think about Maria's operating model with her three circles, and about how each of those three core STiP ideas or threshold concepts might relate to each of Maria Muir's circles. So, focus on how we behave, so culture, values, and behaviours, is key, perhaps, is key to how we change and adapt. We need to balance that with the other hows. And I think this fits really well with, I don't know if she's in the room, but Jane Graham made an observation yesterday that there are issues when we just focus on values and behaviours. I see systems thinking in practice and leadership and other ways of working practices sitting within the how we behave how, and as being fundamentally important to the organisational operating model as a whole. So that's another why, I think, as to why it's important that we grow STiP capabilities within organisations, within the Open University, in my context. So, now on to some origins as regards our Open University Systems Thinking in Practice, community of practice. Our team space was first created back in May 2022 by Barry Verdon, who was former lead of the CoP and a former OU Systems Thinking in Practice tutor. And he created it as a community space for us to ask questions of each other, share resources, and come together to build our own systems thinking in practice. And the first meeting of the community of practice was held in 2022, within which we explored social learning and communities of practice and what that meant to us. And we ran monthly sessions up until December 2023, or Barry did, introducing STiP approaches, and there were discussions on topics, including a few sessions on mapping the Open University as a system and encouraging colleagues to engage in mapping activities. And we generated around 110 community of practice members, so a fairly significant number of people. Barry Verdon sadly passed away at the end of 2023, and myself and my colleague Esther Spring took over as co-leads within the community of practice, and we hosted a couple of sessions during 2024 on a sustainability theme with external speakers. Then, in March 2025, we decided it would be helpful to do a relaunch of the community, and that kind of came about because Dave Hall, our university secretary, had an interest in us doing that. And so myself and Dave Hall and Esther Spring ran a relaunch session in which we focused on what is systems thinking and how might we support our colleagues with thinking differently. And yeah, Dave Hall was very much, or is very much, encouraging colleagues to find out more about systems thinking and think about how we might use it in our work, which is fantastic. It's really great to have that level of sponsorship within the community. Help drive the enthusiasm and participation. And within that session, I gave a very gentle introduction to our 3 core STiP ideas: engaging with multiple perspectives, understanding interrelationships, and reflecting on boundary judgments, and ran a rich picture exercise as a workshop activity in that session, just to help colleagues understanding and engagement with systems thinking in practice, help them do a little bit of sense making. And at that point, yeah, from that point, we started to consider collectively how we might best grow our systems thinking in practice together. And we generated a little bit of feedback from the community. They very much showed appreciation that systems thinking is being used at a high level in the university. Our university secretary is engaging with it and encouraging others to do so. And they appreciate connecting with other colleagues who have similar interests and sharing and iterating on ideas. And there was also a lot of talk, or is also a lot of talk around establishing shared understanding and a common language, so we all understand what we're talking about and where we're coming from. There was a clear demand for more sessions and a want to include a mix of an introduction to new tools and principles, as well as perhaps some more in-depth approaches for more experienced practitioners. And yeah, desire to have a mix of online and hybrid or face-to-face sessions. So we are paying attention to people's feedback as we go. And, I wasn't aware there were transitions on this slide. I'm just going to put them all up. We asked the community for their thoughts on how we might support each other thinking differently, and they made a lot of suggestions, and these were those. I'm not going to talk to those because I think I will run out of time, but just so you're aware of the other things that they were thinking about that will be useful to do in this space. So through that first session and around that time, I feel as though I had a bit of a call to systemic inquiry, and I started to think about where we're at using an approach called I Do, which comes from an organisation called Agenda Shift, and this is Mike Burrows' organisation. Mike was mentioned earlier. He was going to be presenting, but unfortunately couldn't be here. But yeah, this is his approach, I Do, which focuses on ideal, obstacles, and outcomes, or desired outcomes, as I put it. So yeah, the ideal is that we have a space for those with an interest in thinking differently and applying systems thinking in practice, and that we're doing collective sense-making and learning. But there are some obstacles, and we very much have different levels of systems thinking in practice across the university, from people who have been doing systems thinking for decades to people who have very low levels of knowledge and might just have turned up with, not knowing anything about it, but thinking it might be an interesting thing to engage with. We have colleagues who are quite time poor, particularly at the moment, because there's quite a lot of change going on in the community and the university as a whole, and the sector indeed. And yeah, cognitive load issues just anyway, let alone with regard to engaging with STiP. So there's quite a lot of things to be thinking about as we work towards our desired outcome, which is to grow our network of practitioners who are willing to deal with complex challenges collaboratively within the university and beyond. So the approach is very much outcomes focused and collaborative, and about walking the talk. So we're using systems thinking in practice to grow systems thinking in practice. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Very much adapting to emerging needs, listening to what we're hearing along the way, avoiding rigid planning. And the aim is that this will be, or is, a living case study, or a case study of case studies, perhaps as we go along, from which people can learn. And yeah, the community of practice itself is the subject of the systemic inquiry. We have a whole set of, I've gone backwards, of lower level outcomes that perhaps sit underneath the higher level outcome. And these are those. Common language being one of them. And a little bit about our journey. So yeah, using soft systems methodology, finding out about the situation through the use of rich picturing, PQR, CAPWO analysis, creation of a root definition. We've done that in sessions throughout this year so far, from beyond March. Looking to develop a set of learning activities and resources. We have a STiP CoP handbook, which includes the materials we've created so far. And yeah, ultimately looking to run action learning sets, which are aligned with our Open University priorities. Forming a small core team supported by critical friends, including academics, and growing our network, our contributors within the space. That's a really key thing. I should say, yeah, I've been given a day a week to dedicate my time to this, which is super helpful. But it is really great that it's not going to be just me going forward. And yeah, thinking big, but starting small and iterating. So creating safe to fail experiments, essentially. Taking a hypothesis-based type approach. And I'm aware I'm really nearly out of time. I had a slide that illustrates soft systems methodology. I've just mentioned briefly how we work together as a community of practice to do some rich picturing to understand our systems thinking and practice community in the context of the wider university and indeed wider society. So there's a couple of diagrams that illustrate that. And we work together to do some PQR and CAPWO analysis to create a root definition towards gaining a shared understanding of what our community of practice is all about, as illustrated on this slide, which helps everyone's understanding of what we do and how to come along to us, how they can get involved. List of events we've run so far this year. We've got one planned in September. And yeah, I think somebody mentioned earlier in the conference about intentionally thinking about systems thinking methods and tools and practices that would be helpful for others to learn about and engage with. That's the kind of approach I've been taking, going back to those first principles, starting out with the purpose and getting a shared understanding of that through our PQR, rich picturing, CAPWO, all of that. And then my thinking is that we should think around the other 5 or so tools that the Open University teaches and pragmatically take people through those, thinking about what we're seeing and learning as we go and where it might be best helpful to go next. So the light bulbs on this diagram illustrate those that we've touched on already, and then the other ones are on there as well. So SSM, PQR, CAPWO analysis, and rich picturing being the key things. But you've also got critical systems heuristics, SODA, or strategic options development and analysis, viable systems model, and systems dynamics on there. I've probably completely run out of time, but yeah. There you go. That's okay. Thank you.